Hello and welcome back to VR Roundtable. You guys haven't seen us in a while. We took a little break coming out of last year, but we are back. I have a full boat. I have Anthony, Chris, and Gary with me, and in this episode, we are going to preview 2018. Guys, how was your new year? How's it going? It's been a while. It feels like a long time since we've recorded.
It does. It feels like a long time, actually. I was thinking about this today. We've only missed one show, but it feels like we've missed about three or four, to be honest, coming back here today. But so it's been pretty good over Christmas. I had a good Christmas. I got my PSVR. Haven't had too much time to really dive into that yet, but I want to get into it. It's really impressing me, actually, so far. So, I'm pleased I picked that up. But it's been a good Christmas and a good New Year. Looking forward to 2018.
Good deal. Hey, Chris, how's your new year?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. I don't know. For Christmas, I just got a bunch of video making stuff so I can make videos for VR Roundtable about experiences as well as my other channels. So I think that's a good kind of investment for the future. But overall, yeah, it was good. It did feel like it's been like a month or something. It's crazy. I don't know. We got to get back in the swing of it, I guess.
Yeah, I actually liked having the time off, and really during my time, I didn't get anything for Christmas. I guess when you're a dad, you give more than you get. I didn't get anything of note, I should say. I got the typical slippers and those types of gifts, but nothing big and notable. I buy my own stuff, but. One of the things that I did over Christmas break, though, and I took time off from work, is I played nothing but Fallout 4, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but if we were doing our last episode again, I would place it a little bit higher. The game has kind of grabbed me. But I'll send it to Anthony. How was your New Year's? How was your holidays?
Yeah, everything's been really good. And one thing I'm happy about is my wife finally took down all the Christmas decorations like just yesterday. So it's like back to normalcy, when all the Christmas decorations get put away. And then it's weird because the house looks so empty and barren, and it's like colder, because it's like, I don't know, there was all this stuff all over and now it's all gone and it just seems like a big empty warehouse, but it's all good.
Yeah, you just reminded me, I actually still have Christmas decorations up, but anyways, we want to go ahead and start talking about 2018. This show is going to be all about 2018. It may not be a typical show format. We have some news because there's been some very recent announcements and all that, but we're also going to preview some games, so we're not going to focus too much on what we've been playing in the typical format that we always have. So going ahead and getting right into it, the big thing for 2018 so far, and this came out, I believe, on Friday, but the HTC Vive Twitter account teased an image, and the image appears to be an HTC Vive. It does not look like the Vive Focus or anything like that. It's sort of a modeled rendering, but it says New Year's resolution 1/8/18. With CES starting up this week, we can assume it means January 8th. 2018. For Gary, it might be confusing because to him it looks like August 1st, 2018. But either way, we think we're going to get a good Vive announcement. I'm going to send it to Anthony. What's your thoughts on that? What were you thinking when you saw that Twitter announcement go out and the board's blowing up?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty blown away when I first saw it. I was like, oh my God. One of the things that jumps out to me, though, is like, if this really is, say, a Vive 2 or even a Vive 1.5, is that, man, how it's almost like they should have waited a little bit longer or something, because like all the people that just bought Vives over this holiday season, the Vive winter bundle and all that, people are complaining about not getting their Steam cards, and there's that drama. But I mean, talk about adding insult to injury for these people that didn't get their Steam cards or whatever. They just bought a Vive, and then like literally 10 days later, we might have an announcement for a new Vive. Now, I know they have to, I mean, this is CES. It's one time a year. And if you're going to do it, this is where you do it. But I definitely feel like my heart goes out to all the brand new Vive owners that if this really is Vive 2.0. And then the one last thing I'll say, too, is that image that we saw. Like, I don't know that I would read a ton into that image that was on their little tweet, because let's say they have a Vive 2 that looks totally different. Do you really think they would put that picture there? Because if they did, that would make it incredibly obvious. So I kind of think on Monday, tomorrow, when this happens, who knows? Anything can happen, really.
So it's worth noting we are recording this on Sunday the 7th. When this episode drops, we'll have a few hours for you guys to see this before we actually find out what this announcement's going to be. I actually defer a little bit there from you, Anthony. I think they were very intentional in showing it as a Vive, so as for a lot of people to not think it's necessarily a Vive focus announcement. And I think it also strongly suggests that it's not necessarily a Vive 2. I agree with you in the sense that I think if it was a Vive 2, that would be a bit misleading. So I think it's strongly hinting at a sort of a Vive 1.5, like a sort of mid-cycle refresh. And my expectations on this is that that's exactly what it's going to be. I think it's going to be relatively mild but exciting. I would say somewhere along the lines of the Samsung Odyssey resolution, although I would gladly accept more. We've heard them talk about having with Valve working on lenses and everything, so maybe a better lens technology, although this image also very clearly shows the concentric rings. So let me send it to Gary. What do you think is going to be announced, and what would they have to announce to make you buy one?
Yeah, it's difficult to know exactly because there's so many things that it could be. I mean, if I was to hazard a guess, I'd probably say it would be something like, because the Vive has been designed to be modular, so you can change different aspects of it. And ideally, I think for everybody that owns a Vive, and you mentioned like people that have picked up a Vive over the holiday period and they picked them up in these discount prices and stuff like that, they don't want to be left out. And if they can just pick up a few months down the line, 6 months down the line, just the headset part of it, just the HMD, with slightly better screens, slightly higher resolution screens, which can then have a tiny processing unit that's built into the HMD that upscales the image. With that, it means that it will be backwards compatible with all the other software that's out there at the moment, but you will get a very slightly clearer image. You'll get a less screen door effect, and it could be quite a significant difference, really, because even upscaling can provide some really, really good results. Now, the problem is with all of this, and I agree with you, Steve, that the image, and you, Anthony, actually, the image itself that they're showing on there probably isn't necessarily important, other than the fact that they have shown what looks to be a Vive. I think if it was a Vive 2.0 and it was going to be something radically different, it was going to be a headset that looked completely different, they would have done something similar to what they did with the Focus, like showing some kind of silhouette or something like that, rather than showing what is clearly a current generation Vive. So I think that the fact that they've included any image in there at all means that it will be a very similar form factor to the current Vive, with an increase in resolution. At least that's my best guess. I mean, it's all up in the air. I have no idea really what's going to happen. Now, on your other point, Steve, what would it take for me to purchase or sort of upgrade to a new Steam VR headset? Resolution is a big one. I think resolution is a big thing. Whether I would consider that just for a slightly higher resolution that is then being upscaled without any increase in, say, like the Pimax, something we've seen from the Pimax with a higher field of view and a resolution increase, I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest. I'd have to really try it. I think a demo would be an ideal way to judge that, whether the resolution makes that much of a difference or not. We'll wait and see. This time tomorrow, hopefully we'll have some answers. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think resolution will kind of matter. I know when I had that Dell MR headset, which was a little bit of a resolution bump, not quite as nice as the Samsung Odyssey, I played only it for, 3, 5, 7 days, however long I had it. And when I went back to my Rift, and when I went back to my Vive, I felt the degradation. Now, when I first played with that MR headset, I didn't necessarily feel the improved resolution. I felt it more when I went back to the old headsets. Oh, this isn't as sharp. This isn't as nice. So very curious there. I think for me, I'll go ahead and answer my own question, and then I'll send it to you, Chris. What I think they will have to do is have a whole new package, maybe sell the headset on its own for existing Vive owners. But I think, they don't, or they shouldn't be, HTC shouldn't just be wanting to target existing Vive owners. They should be wanting to grow the market, attract people who don't have VR at all. So in my mind, the correct package here would be a full package, the most modern lighthouses, knuckles controllers included, and an improved HMD, whatever that entails. I would put it at a Samsung Odyssey like resolution. If it's higher than that, that's super awesome. But I wouldn't bank on anything higher than that. That will actually make me want to buy it. If it's just a headset improvement and no knuckles controllers, I don't think I want to just jump into that. And this is the perfect time for them to introduce Knuckles. Actually, if you kind of sort of think about it, like, we've been talking about for ever since Knuckles was announced, like, how are they going to introduce Knuckles? Are they going to sell it standalone? And maybe they will, but this is a perfect way to do that while getting, having a better package to attract people who don't own VR, but also having enough of a package that entice existing Vive owners to kind of want to sell off their units and just pick up this whole new suite. That's what I personally like to see and what it would take. So I'm going to send it to Chris. What will it take for you to buy into this, and what do you think they're going to announce?
Yeah, well, I haven't sold my Vive just yet, but I do think that it'd be important to kind of have new controllers and all this stuff built in. I don't think that's what we're going to get, though. I think it's purely a resolution bump. Maybe it uses the same sort of screens that Pimax uses. We don't know, because remember I said, like, if Pimax has these screens, I wonder who else has access to this type of technology. So maybe HTC was actually kind of helping manufacture those or whatever. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. I think really it sounds like they might even go for a tiered system where they have the existing Vive. Maybe they keep it at the existing, like, lowered price that it's at for the holidays. And then they also have this new, like, Vive Deluxe or something with a higher resolution. I think that would make sense as a kind of deluxe package. But man, if they don't sell this with just the improved resolution version by itself, I think everyone's going to be really mad. So I hope they do that. Just looking at the image, like, I don't think any of us mentioned this yet, but the top part kind of looks like what a Vive currently looks like, or a Rift, where the New Year's part is all skewed and kind of blurry, and then the resolution part is, like, way too clear. So obviously that's an exaggeration, but I think they're trying to show the difference. So hopefully it's a dramatic difference. Based on the image, it's a dramatic difference. But also, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of screwing themselves over if they're showing how bad, like, the current one is, and they're trying to sell this new one. Like, the current Vive is still pretty good, so the New Year's thing being that blurry is a little weird. So I don't know, whoever marketed that maybe could have done a better job. But yeah, no, I agree with almost everything you guys said. Like, it's probably just going to be increased resolution with a deluxe audio strap, hopefully with Knuckles. If not, I don't know if I would buy it. Like, if it had Knuckles included and the new Steam VR tracking, I think that would entice me enough to buy it. Yeah,
I didn't actually mention deluxe audio strap, but yeah, it's gonna, for me, it would have to also come with something like that. I can't go back to just the basic strap. So I'm gonna send it back to Anthony. I asked the other two guys a question, and when you spoke, you didn't have a chance to answer that question. So what do you think is actually going to be in the package, and what will it take for you to pick one up?
Man, yeah. So for me to pick one up, it would have to have Knuckles. It would have to have the new lighthouses, just because I figure, well, see, I sold my stuff off and I'm looking to jump to a new level, like the next level of whatever Steam VR is going to. So I'd like to start off with the new lighthouses. I mean, I know they don't do anything special, but there could be the possibility of adding a third lighthouse, and it just makes sense to kind of be on that level. Knuckles would absolutely be mandatory, in my opinion, because if it doesn't come with Knuckles, I mean, really, would they really have the same exact wands that they've had for over 2 years, or well, 2 years now, basically? Because the wands, I remember when I first got the Vive, April 2016, those wands seemed so next generation. They had such a good feel to them, and the tactile, like when you did longbow and the feedback, it all felt so great. But now they just seem so bulky and like obnoxious a little bit. And it's like, you would think they would have to do something, just something minor, if nothing. I mean, just making them a little bit smaller, maybe a little more ergonomic or something. But one thing I did want to mention real quick is, don't we have an HDMI problem with this higher resolution because, okay, I know HDMI 2.1, the specifications have been finalized. And I believe if someone is going to have a product that has HDMI 2.1, the earliest it could be ready, I think, would be like September. But then if you have HDMI 2.1, your GPU needs to have HDMI 2.1, and none of the GPUs have that. So, I mean, we go down a whole nother rabbit hole when we go down this, but we do have a cable problem with this higher resolution. Now, if it just has line doubling built into it, so it just takes the signal, it line doubles that and makes it look better, that's fine. There's no problem there. You don't even need to worry about the cable. But if people want native higher resolution, like imagine some of the Vive games that we play that are not too demanding from a technological standpoint, like say Winlands or something. Like imagine if this was much higher resolution and if you could run Winlands at this native higher resolution, but you still need like DisplayPort or something, right? Like there's a bandwidth problem there. So that's kind of curious how that's going to be worked out.
Well, I think the Samsung Odyssey, and that's kind of why I said I think that's about what the resolution increase would be, which would work fine. I think when you start talking about 4K panels per eye and stuff like the Pimax, I think that's when you start really running into an HDMI bandwidth issue, and I don't see this Vive announcement going there. I think that would be too limiting. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it will be an upscaling thing that they're going for here, mainly because they don't want to limit their market. The GPU power, they'll be limiting their market far too much if they just aim for native resolution increases rather than just doing an upscaling thing, which will have its own level of benefits anyway. So I think that would be the way for them to go. The one thing I wanted to mention just finally on this, and it's something that Steve, that you mentioned earlier, really, it was in this image, they do seem to make a very distinct point of showing the Fresnel lenses, that the curves and the ridges in there. I don't know why they would do that. It seems a little bit strange to me that they would continue to show that. It's sort of almost a focus point of this as well. So whether that's got anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But it was just something that stuck out to me.
Really hope it does not have the concentric rings. I really dislike them on the Vive. I would rather have the rifts sort of ghosting. But let's talk.
Just one more thing.
No, I wasn't going to segue, but go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like Anthony said, I guess the best thing we could hope for is probably less than 4K, because like DisplayPort, if let's say they went with DisplayPort, the best DisplayPort can do for most of our graphics cards is 4K at 60 hertz. So it'd have to be less than 4K, or they'd have to have two DisplayPort cables. So I think we should just kind of set that as like a hard limit. Like it isn't going to be 4K. It has to be less than 4K because it has to be 90 hertz. So either that or it'll be upscaled, which probably makes the most sense.
Absolutely. So one more round past all you guys. Say one thing only and price. Go. Start with you, Anthony. Price.
I'm going to say $699.
Chris.
I'd say maybe like $399 or $299 for the headset, and then $699 for including the knuckles and everything.
And Gary.
Yeah, I'll go with Chris. Actually, I think $399 for the headset itself, and then $699 for the entire package.
I can get behind $699 myself. I hope to see it $599 and not actually effectively be sort of a market price increase. That said, once more, by the time the audience, you guys are listening to this episode, it'll be a couple hours before this announcement comes through. So we'll see how we stack up, and we'll review it next week when we do the next episode. But moving on, in keeping with the theme, so we're trying to preview 2018. The next thing I have on the list is shifting gears to the competitor Oculus. The year of 2017, we had Oculus fund a title just about monthly. They missed the mark once or twice, but for the most part, on a monthly cadence, we had a sort of a premier, higher level, I'll call it AA, not quite necessarily AAA type title that they helped push into the market. And I think I liked that. That was something that I really liked from 2017, but I haven't seen really any indication that that sort of thing is going to continue. So I'm going to send it to you guys. Gary, do you think Oculus is going to fund much in 2018? We do know that we have Marvel Powers United, and I think Brass Tactics. I'm not in the moment. I'm not entirely sure if they're funding that one anyway. But outside of those two titles, I'm not really aware of anything in the pipeline. What's your take on that?
No, I'm not either. And I think they've definitely got commitment. They've shown a past commitment to funding titles, and I think they'll continue that for the foreseeable future. However, we've got development times. Games take time to make. They don't want to necessarily announce anything when all of these companies that they've probably provided some kind of funding to, if they're not ready to announce anything themselves yet. So I think there will be a gap, and it's a well-deserved gap in many ways, because last year we had so many Oculus titles coming out that were funded by them. And a lot of them I really enjoyed. I thought they were great. Going forward, I'm sure they're continuing to fund things behind the scenes, but we probably won't see any announcements until later on this year, at the very earliest, really.
Okay. Anthony, what's your take on this?
Well, I remember back to the Oculus Connect. I don't remember which one it was, but there was one of them where they had it on the screen. They had, $250 million, and they had these numbers where they're like, we're going to pump $250 million into blah, 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 whatever it is. Right. And so we know that Robo Recall, I believe, was 10 million. We don't know how much Lone Echo was, or Arctica 1, or Killing Floor Incursion, although that wasn't 100% exclusive. But we don't know how much they've already blown through of that 250 million. We know that maybe a little bit of that is going towards like Marvel Powers United and Brass Tactics. And then, of course, we have Respawn Entertainment. They have a deal with Respawn. Now, Respawn, of course, was acquired by EA, and there was some worry there that maybe EA would cancel that. But I believe Oculus or somebody came out and said, no, that deal is still solid. That deal's still happening. Although that's long. I mean, we're talking probably 2019 before we see this Respawn game. I've said before that I believe momentum in the VR industry is good right now, but I think one of the dark clouds that is kind of in the distance in the VR industry is the fact that I believe 2018 is a little bit of a backing off from the major companies. Like, Rockstar did LA Noire, and Bethesda did Skyrim and Fallout, and we got some big things. And CCP Games, they backed out of VR. They weren't making enough money off of it. And so I could see some of the major big developers pull away a little bit, and 2018 could be much more of an indie based year. So we're going to have to kind of like deal with that a little bit. I don't know,
Okay. Chris, what do you think is Oculus's game, and do you think they're going to fund anything, or do you, like Anthony mentioned, a lot of people kind of slowing down on the investment cycle? Do you think we're going to see that huge push this year in 2018?
Well, yeah, I don't think they're trying to fund AA games anymore. I think they're trying to focus on making AAA games, or like funding these giant games. But, like you said, Gary, these games take years to make rather than the few months or, however long these games have been being developed for. So, I mean, I remember when, there's that Skyrim quote, I think from Jason Rubin, right? Who said like, we want to kind of make our own Skyrim. We don't want to port things over. So it sounds like that's really what their focus is. But I think that means this year is going to be a pretty dry year for new releases other than the indie scene, like you said, Anthony. So I think maybe, by the end of the year, we'll get some announcements of some actually AAA fully VR ready games. But until then, I don't know. I don't think they're funding these small experiences anymore. I think they're trying to aim for more killer apps for their platform.
Okay. Well, one of the things I also had on the list, not Oculus specific now at the moment, is last year we had RE7, Fallout, Skyrim. We had these big AAA mainstream games that non-VR owners loved, and we got them in VR, and I liked all of those games in VR and played a boatload of Fallout. I only played Fallout. I think I mentioned that earlier. Right now, I'm not aware of a game that is sort of has the mainstream's attention, that's known, whether it's a port or whether it's a native VR game. Do you guys think we're going to see one of those in 2018, or do you think, now that we're kind of past the Fallout hype, that everyone's sort of waiting to see how that goes before they make any major announcements? I'll send it to Gary.
There's a couple of parts to that. I think that you see that there's, in terms of AAA, I think we could either go down the road of current developers like Bethesda, converting games like Fallout and Skyrim over to VR. And I think they've done actually a pretty good job of doing that. I'm playing a lot of Fallout and playing a lot of Skyrim as well. Now, we could see more AAA developers see what's going on there, and depending on how well Bethesda report their sales on this kind of stuff, we might see more AAA developers decide to port for relatively low commitment some of their existing titles over to VR. The other side of that is, will we see AAA developers really jump in? Will we see, during 2018, will we see AAA developers really jump in and start to develop their own ground up VR games? And that would fall in, if it's going to happen, I think it would fall in far more likely with what we've seen with Resident Evil 7, where they've developed a game which has been made for VR as well as a flat game. And it works so well. I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil 7, and they've done a great job on that. And there's people out there that will say a game needs to be made for VR, and it needs to be, ground up VR, and it only needs to be VR. You can't do a flat version and a VR version at the same time. I don't necessarily think that's true anymore. I think you can develop these two platforms in tandem with some very specific differences between the two. Now, that's the part I'm most excited for, because I think that's the most realistic side. I think the first stage of AAA developers getting into this will be porting existing titles. That's sort of them dipping their toes into it. The next stage will be converting a VR game alongside a flat game and releasing them both at the same time. And then the final stage will obviously be a made for VR game that will only be released in VR. I think that's a long way off for AAA developers at the moment, but I think that middle stage could be something that we might see the beginning of in 2018.
That's what I personally hope to see as well, because I think, I would love everything to be, sort of VR centric and have all those bells and whistles a la Lone Echo. But I think if I'm sort of being a realist and thinking of the business side of it, and thinking of the capital investments and everything, that, that's the best way forward. I think Capcom did a good job, and at this point, with what Bethesda has done, I fully expect that when they announce the Skyrim successor, or the next Elder Scrolls game, or the next Fallout series, I expect them to say coming to Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and VR systems, because I think that's a good way to sort of help with the investment. Because if you do VR only, your market is so small that it's hard to have all that great voice acting and that big giant world that Fallout is. Anthony, I'm going to send it your way. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I don't really see any major AAA cross-platform games coming this year. What I do see, though, is, remember Microsoft. Microsoft has to enter this game. I'm talking from an Xbox standpoint. They have to enter this game. November of this year, there will be a headset for Xbox One X. If there isn't, then they're just giving the VR console market to Sony. So I believe they have to do it, or they're either getting out of gaming altogether if they're not going to do it. And they are going to have a couple AAA developers that are making very specific games that will sell this. And so I believe in November, we might get some really juicy stuff from that standpoint. But as far as something that can go to all the platforms, I don't see it. Although what I do see, Fallout 3, baby. And I'm down to play some Fallout 3. In fact, I like the story of Fallout 3 and the kind of the world of Fallout 3 better than I do Fallout 4. And they've already shown that, Fallout 4 works in VR, with some issues, but once you get it all working, it works pretty damn good. So how long would it take them to set a little team aside? Escalation Studios probably working right now. I mean, Fallout 3 could be like a late summer shocker because Skyrim is going to be November for the PC VR platforms. That's going to be November, right? So, but I see it kind of slow. You know what would be the dream though? Rockstar Grand Theft Auto 5 in VR. Oh my God, that would be the dream, but I don't think we're going to get it.
That would be the dream, right? Like, so I have to eat a little bit of crow all along as a console gamer, and the type of things I've not been a fan of Fallout, Skyrim, and open world games. I'm not a fan of Grand Theft Auto because playing it on a monitor, they just didn't really interest me. Like, I didn't like the open sandbox. I like more of an Uncharted or a Final Fantasy type narrative, cutscenes, and very, very linear. But I have to say, I've absolutely loved Skyrim and Fallout, in VR. And I think I would expect Grand Theft Auto would do the exact same thing. That would be super cool. Moving on, the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about was hardware. Now, full honesty, full disclosure, I had this on the list before we had the Vive teaser when I was putting together the notes for the show, and so I was expecting that. So now we know some hardware is coming in 2017 or in 2018. The LG is still sitting out there. So setting those aside, are you expecting any more VR headset, any more the Pimax as well? So outside of the LG, this Vive teaser, and the Pimax, are there going to be any other notable headsets? I know we'll continue to have the throwaway stuff that's sitting on your Target shelf for your kids and all those sorts of things. But anything more of note? I'm going to send it to Chris.
So other than like the mobile headsets like Oculus Go and all this stuff coming out, I mean, I know Oculus isn't going to announce anything, and I think that's probably the right move because they don't want to piss off all their people who bought Rifts at low prices with making something better than that just yet. But as for other companies that don't care as much, like Vive, they're probably just focusing on incremental improvements. But I don't know. Hopefully LG shows up, but I think, like we've said in the past, they'd have to kind of restart from the get-go and just because right now their headset isn't going to cut it. It's too similar to a Vive. And now if this Vive 1.5 or whatever has better resolution, then it's kind of the nail in the coffin for the current LG design. So, but yeah, overall, I think it's kind of the year of mobile hardware starting to get released from all these different companies, just so VR is more accessible. And then maybe after that, in 2019, we might start to see some new actual headsets that are for the desktop side of things.
Okay, I'm going to send it to Gary. What do you think we'll see? And it doesn't have to just be on the headsets themselves. Maybe just any hardware. And it's probably pretty vague, limiting just headsets. A hard question to answer.
Yeah, well, just on the point of headsets, first of all, because I think we will see the LG, and I'm thinking, maybe this coming week at CES that they'll show something there which will be a little bit more significant than what they've shown in the past. Hopefully, a slightly more significant upgrade to the Vive. I think they have to do that to compete with it at the moment. But also, just sticking with Steam VR, I think in 2018 we're going to see more announcements of Steam VR headsets. I think there will be more companies jumping on board with that technology. At least I hope so. Anyway. So that's really my prediction for that. In terms of other hardware, it's difficult to say. We're still waiting on these Knuckles controllers, and the trackers. The Vive trackers have really yet to make any significant appearance in sort of games and stuff like that. They just don't seem to be making that much of an impact or anything. So hopefully we'll see more news on those and get some more information on all of that kind of stuff. The thing is, Steam VR, it's got all of this potential to have all these extra little tracked objects. So you've got this keyboard that we saw a few months ago as well. So, all of these little peripherals will probably start coming out. I don't know whether any of these will catch on at the moment. I still feel a little bit like it's too early days for them to expand Steam VR out too much to these Vive trackers, these keyboards and all this stuff. I think they really need to refine what they've got so that people that buy these packages are getting a complete solution and they don't need to purchase anything necessarily. The market is too niche at the moment to expand on this kind of stuff, at least from my point of view. And just finally, just on what Chris was mentioning about mobile VR and standalone VR, I think that will be at least we know, from Oculus, I think that will be the focus of them this year. So we've got Oculus Go coming out, and we've also got the Santa Cruz going out to developers later on this year as well. So I think this will be a focus for Oculus, and I think it will be an increasing focus for other companies as well, depending on how they see the success of Oculus Go. And just on that point, actually, well, we can probably leave that to the next point, but this just the past couple of days, there was this report that Oculus Go, the FCC have passed certain requirements for the Oculus Go, and there seems to be like a 32 gigabyte and a 64 gigabyte model of this headset coming out. So we can probably touch on that as well at some point on this show.
All right. I'm going to send it to you, Anthony. Let's go ahead and roll up kind of both of what I did with Chris and Gary, and not just headsets, but any hardware. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in one more, and that's wireless. Will we see any of that stuff this year?
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought, let me just say with the LG, I've always thought the LG would be wireless. Like it would have an option for wireless, because I've mentioned this a number of times, but I remember when LG first announced their headset and they had some people there, and one guy was talking about how the wire coming out of the LG was a really thin wire that went down to basically where your belt would kind of be, the average person's belt, and then it connected to another longer wire. But the guy mentioned, it's kind of interesting that this is right at your belt height, because guess what? You could have a wireless transmitter right there. That's where it plugs in. It makes all the sense in the world. And I think they even mentioned that to the LG guy, and the LG guy just kind of smiled at him. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see built-in wireless with possibly the LG. I'd love it with the Vive, this Vive 1.5, but I don't think so, because if it was going to be wireless, wouldn't the tweet say, look, Ma, no wires or something? It'd be something different. But wireless should come, you would think, at a certain point. And then as far as will we see another company enter the fray? What other company is there? Because Intel, remember, they had their, what was it? Project, I forget what they had. They had some, Intel had
Alloy, Project Alloy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was that one.
Yeah, Project Alloy. And they backed off of that. Now, Samsung, of course, they hooked up with Microsoft, but there's no law that says they couldn't have a Steam VR project as well. And I think of all the companies out there, I think Samsung is the one to maybe keep your eye on. But I don't, and then also the Microsoft mixed reality headsets, all those companies that are making those, they could have versions too that could come sometime this year that could be vastly improved. And also Oculus CV2. I know Jason Rubin went on record saying there's no CV2 in 2018. There's none that's going to be released in 2018, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we get to Oculus Connect and they start teasing their next generation headset, and that could be huge to try to keep. One of the reasons I could see them doing that is because there's all this other competition, and they want to keep the hardcore Oculus community be like, no, I'll wait till Oculus brings me the next gen, you know what I mean, rather than defecting over to one of these other headsets. And then the hardware thing, one last thing I'll say about that is, what I would really love to see from a hardware standpoint is some type of Connect, like Microsoft Connect type device, where you have your headset, you have your controllers, but you have some type of external device that is viewing your entire body, tracking your skeleton, and in real time putting you in the game. Because when I think about Fallout 4 VR is my dream. I am living my dream. It is beautiful. It is wonderful. I play it every day. I love it. It's incredible for me. But the only thing I would love to have added into that Fallout VR experience is if I could just look down and be like, oh my God, here's my arms, here's my chest, look down, I'm in the game. I think that could just change the game so much. And I think an external Connect type device that could do that in real time, because putting trackers all over you like that, ultimately that's not going to work. So that would be my dream there.
Yeah, I agree that the trackers aren't going to work. My take on hardware is I'm not expecting much beyond what we know, which is pretty much what you guys have all said. So I think we're all in pretty much agreement there that there's not a lot out there. Could there be a company like, I don't know, that it kind of plays in the display area. I'm drawing a blank right now that isn't in the VR market, that just kind of comes out and has a super not compelling device, kind of like the Lenovo or the Acer. That just doesn't really grab the attention from the VR consumers. It's possible we get a headset like that, but beyond that, I'm not expecting anything earth-shattering this year. The Pimax might be the most interesting, and this Vive refresh might be the most popular. Wireless would be super awesome. I'm not banking on that. It seems like with the TP cast, it's got a lot of issues, and it's hard to necessarily shake all that out. I hope to see the industry continue to grow in that space, though, which kind of brings me to the next big point of 2018 is. What do you guys think is going to happen in terms of industry growth, in terms of capturing the attention of consumers? I'll go ahead and go on record and say that I'm sure that from a dollars and from a revenue standpoint, that the industry will grow in 2018. I'm not sure if it'll meet most projections, but in terms of talk and having a sort of buzz in the air, I sort of feel like it might be a down year as we kind of get through 2017, which was supposed to be more of an up year, and 2019 will be the rebound. I'm going to send it back to Chris. What's your take on that?
On like the future of, I got lost. I got really lost.
I probably didn't do a good job. So in 2018, what are you thinking the industry is going to be? What is it going to represent? Is John Q. Public going to take note of anything in particular because of something that happens in 2018?
This is real confusing because I think it's the year of mobile, but also, man, this year or 2017, I should say, was the year of real crappy mobile, because if you go to any store, they have these $10, $20 VR headsets that plug into phones, and they're just trash. I mean, I don't know. Like, my grandmother got me one. She's like, "I thought you would like this. It says VR on it." I'm like, you got to return this. I'm not going to use this ever. But man, I don't know. I feel like the general public just sees VR. They don't realize the differences of good VR and bad VR. So I just hope like someone like Oculus can come fix this, because like right now there's all these pieces of junk out there, and like I just hope the attention comes back to be like, let's get an Oculus Go or let's get a Gear VR, not let's get this random company's thing that you stick your phone in. I don't know. That's not going to cut it anymore. So I think it's probably going to, there's going to be a lot of growth in the mobile industry. I think probably non-existent growth, maybe slight growth in the desktop industry, but probably not in, probably more units, obviously, but not drastic increase in sales from what we have today. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that this year mobile becomes good again, because I don't know, that's just been bugging me. She's like, my grandmother gave that to like her other nephew or whatever, and like, I don't know, he doesn't even have a phone, so she thought it came with a phone. And like, I feel like the general consumer kind of sees that, and that's kind of what they think VR is, and they don't really realize how good it can be. So I hope Oculus or somebody fixes this with a standalone headset.
Absolutely. I think the biggest opportunity for growth outside of mobile, I think you're spot on that mobile is probably the biggest opportunity, and I think HTC is clearly focused there, Oculus is clearly focused there. But one more area of growth, and Anthony touched on it earlier, is console, and Sony's killing it. But if Microsoft chooses to put Xbox and VR together in some way, that's a big opportunity for growth, because I think relatively quickly it could become the number 2 headset. I don't know how fast it could catch catch up to Sony, but I think they could shoot past Oculus and HTC relatively quickly. Now, I think our best chance this year is an announcement, or maybe a very, very late release in 2018, so it might not have a big impact on 2018 as a whole, but I remain very interested in what they might do. Gary, what is your thoughts in this space?
Well, I think there's three main parts that have potential for growth, and mobile is the main one. I agree with you guys. I think mobile VR, Oculus Go is going to be a big thing. It's priced correctly. I think it's a price point which a lot of people could jump into, and knowing that they're getting a quality experience without the need to have a mobile phone that's necessarily compatible with any particular headset or anything like that. The other point is PSVR and console. This is what you were saying, Steve. PSVR is shown incredible growth over the past year. 2 million units they've sold now. This is not insignificant. This is not a small amount anymore. This is a quality product that Sony put out there, and a lot of people are jumping on. And just over Christmas, I'm speaking to a lot of people that I know, are acquaintances of mine who I had no idea that were even mildly interested in VR, and they've purchased PSVRs. So I think it's getting to that point now where people are really jumping on board with this. I think console VR, PSVR initially is what we know. If Xbox do something, then that would be great too. And the final thing, and this is a bit of a strange one, but I think Ready Player One, the movie, I think that will elevate it in some ways, depending on how successful it is and how well people sort of take to that kind of thing. I think that will be a great movie for VR as well, and that could spur on people to purchase PSVRs. If PSVR drops to sort of $200, £200 like it did previously over the past month or so, I think people that go out and see Ready Player One as just this latest blockbuster movie, they could easily jump on a PSVR after watching that film.
Man, you're spot on. I didn't even think about Ready Player One and the impact that I hope it has, and I think it could have a very positive impact. And you're also spot on. Like when I think of course, I know you guys, but I met you all online. I've not met any of you in person, and I think of the people that I know in person in my life, in and around my city, or people I went to school with. None of them have VR outside of PlayStation VR. I do not know a single person in real life that has a Rift or a Vive, or certainly a Pimax or anything like that. So that console is the opportunity, and it sort of mirrors what we see in the general gaming trends too. So it really doesn't come as much of a surprise. And then mobile as well, as that's just growing and capturing the mindset of young kids all over. So that's a huge space as well. Anthony, sending it your way.
Yeah, Gary stole my thunder with Ready Player One. I was going to mention that one. But what's funny about movies is movies can sometimes there's a big movie that's on the horizon, right? And it comes out and it's a whimper. It doesn't, it doesn't have the legs. And then sometimes it does. You just never know with these movies. And so if Ready Player One, like if that movie comes out and if it really catches a buzz and it really becomes this thing that really drives people, like people are going to the theater to see it multiple times. And if it really has that kind of impact, that could really help. And then, of course, Xbox in November, that's another big shot in the arm right there. But the biggest problem that I see for VR when we're talking about mainstream, like we're talking about like NeoGAF and stuff, we're talking about regular console gamer, regular flat gamers, okay, that just haven't gotten the VR bug. What is going to get these people into VR? And it's a problem because you hear two things from these people. You hear price. Like some of them are like, when it's $199, wake me up and then I'll buy one. So you have these people that are incredibly price sensitive, and they need the price to drop dramatically, for it to work. Like they want the Vive at like $199. And then on the other side of the coin, you have the people that are like, it's kind of good, but it's not there yet. The resolution needs to be way the hell better. I want to put on these, I want to get lost in a world. I want to really, see photorealism. And that is obviously on the high end. And I don't think we're going to get close to either of those of those scenarios. I mean, PlayStation VR, sure, but you still need to have a PlayStation. Luckily, 70 million people around the world do, so that does help it out. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see tremendous growth this year. See, I'm interested in the dedicated VR headset. I don't really care that much about mobile. So I'm sure we'll see some great mobile growth, but I'm more interested in like dedicated VR headset.
Okay. Well, leading that way, we forgot one segment altogether, and I'm going to send it back to Anthony because it's sort of his bread and butter, and I know he loves the that segment. But there's the AR space. And there was an announcement that VR Roundtable has missed because we did our award show and all that, but that is Magic Leap. We know where Magic Leap has announced their developer kit, so to speak. Full disclosure, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it because I'm kind of Magic Leap saturated. Like I just kind of want to wait for it and see what it does. It's too much of a buzz. It has so much of a hype that there's no way it doesn't let me down in some way. But I'm gonna go ahead and send it right back to Anthony and talk about Magic Leap. Will it lead AR? Will it be an area of growth for the industry? It's not specifically VR, but it's kind of its kissing cousin. Will we see growth in the industry from AR, and will Magic Leap be a big part of that?
Yeah, man, the thing about Magic Leap, the problem with Magic Leap is it's not going to be affordable. This thing is going to my guess right now, like if someone put a gun to my head and said, how much will Magic Leap 1 cost? I would say $2,500. Okay. That's my prediction on how much Magic Leap 1 is going to cost. $2,500. So I don't know that you're going to be going to Best Buy to pick up a Magic Leap. Although that's what needs to happen. What there needs to be is demos of this, because if Magic Leap is truly spectacular, and I know the field of view is going to be limited. It's not going to be much bigger than HoloLens, but it's going to need to be this situation where somebody puts on HoloLens and they're like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. And then somebody puts on Magic Leap and they're like, holy shit, these fools killed it. It's going to have to be that kind of a difference. And what I would like to see from a Magic Leap standpoint is, even if it is 2,500 and like no one can, your average normal people cannot afford it. But still, if it can get out there where people can try it and they see it, then what that can do is that can jumpstart this whole freaking thing. Because what that can do is people will put this thing on, like grandmas, soccer moms, regular people, salt of the earth people. They put this on and they're like, holy shit. And then what they know is this is the future. AR, VR, whatever you want to call it, it is the future. They know it, and then it's on their radar as well. Yeah, 2,500. I can't afford this now, but it makes everybody will come to this realization that yeah, this is the future. TVs are their days are numbered. Like, this is the future. And I do believe it could possibly happen. I really do. So, but I don't know where they're going to display this. Like, you're going to have to go to Disneyland to try it. I don't know how you're going to get your hands on it.
Yeah, it has a problem there. And how does one try it? Like, I'm very interested. I would absolutely love to try one, but I know personally I'm not going to shell out what we all believe to be a very expensive price for it. But I'm also very interested in seeing where the product goes, and I want it to be a big success, because I think there's, and we've talked about it tons and tons of times, but I think there's huge potential for a real good quality and affordable AR device that's comfortable, that you can kind of wear throughout a long portion of your day in some way. And I'm not sure this product is that, but one of the things that makes smartphones so successful, I think, is because it's just easy to have with you at all times. And having this type of technology, that if it's easy to have with you at all times, I think could be a huge thing, more so than sort of a tethered VR experience where you have to be, in a room where you have a console or a computer or whatever. Gary, what's your take on Magic Leap now that we're 3 weeks or so late on the party?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you guys said. The thing is, I can't believe that Magic Leap One, this product, will be intended to be a consumer product. I think it will be aimed at sort of industry professionals, where they're able to demo certain things that they are doing in their, for example, like real estate or something like that. They could use these devices to show prospective clients and stuff like that, various things within the home, what the home could potentially be, or something like that. I believe it will be aimed primarily at those kind of people. This first product, Anthony's right. I think it's got to be at least £2,500 or $2,500 for it to be anything really. So I don't see consumers paying for that kind of product. The other thing is when you look at these early videos of Magic Leap, and they were so impressive, like 3 years ago or 2 or 3 years ago, whenever you first saw these incredible videos where they were showing what this possible product could potentially do in the future. It just blew me away. But when I look back at those videos now, and I look at where we are in VR now and where that was then in AR, I just thinking about it in context and what we know about the HoloLens and the field of view and all these other things, the models are not necessarily solid, they're sort of a little bit transparent and all this kind of stuff. It makes those videos seem slightly less impactful, and that's really what I think we're going to get from this first generation product from Magic Leap. I don't think it's going to be anything more than what we've seen from HoloLens. However, what I will say is I think the form factor that they've got is very impressive. If they can get a HoloLens level experience within this form factor of just very simple glasses, I think that would be a big win for them, and that would make it worthwhile on its own. I don't think it's going to be leaps ahead of what we've seen from HoloLens already, but I think if they can do it in the form factor that they've got out there, that would be impressive. So yeah, but that's not to say that the Magic Leap have got other technology in the background that will be for a forthcoming product, 5 years down the line, that really will blow us away. I just think this first product will be pretty much in line with what we've seen from HoloLens.
Alrighty, I think you're right, but part of me is really hoping out that it comes in at $9.99 or something like that, and it's purely hope. It's not a science or an evidence based wish. Chris, are you selling all of your electric skateboards to pick one of these up?
I guess I could. I don't know. But yeah, what I was just thinking about is, I don't know, the price isn't as big a deal as I think we're talking about here. Because if this really is the impactful experience we want it to be, if this is wow, this is better than anything I've ever tried. TVs are $3,000. I don't know. TVs can be really expensive. People with 4K TVs can spend $5 or $6,000 on TVs. So I think if this ends up I don't know, it has to replace something. If this can replace a TV experience for people, I think the price is justified. And I don't know, phones are already getting more expensive every day. The iPhone 10 is $1,000 already. So I don't think the price is the biggest deal, but I like you all said, I don't think this version is the one that's going to go big, but this might be the first taste of the consumer version, which could potentially really change everything. I think that's what Magic Leap is betting on when they're making these products, is that people are going to try them, everyone's going to want them, and it's really going to change the world. So that's hopefully where they're headed. But I think, like you guys said, it's probably going to be similar to HoloLens for this first version, but in the future, I think once it gets to that form factor, that price, and that experience, then everyone's going to want one.
Yep. So does anybody else have anything they want to add on Magic Leap? Or if not, we're going to start previewing some games that we know about in 2018. Of course, we haven't played any of them, but nevertheless, we can preview some. So if no one has anything else, let's go ahead and do that. The first game that I want to talk about is Ace Combat 7. Now that's a game that it's a main game, and it comes with a VR mode. It's not a VR exclusive game or anything like that. So I'm gonna send it to Gary because I know I've heard you specifically state excitement for Ace Combat 7. So how do you think that game's gonna fare out?
I hope it will fare very well because when I first got VR, I downloaded a game, DCS World. It's a flight simulator, a combat flight simulator. You can get for free, actually. You pay for extra planes and things like this within it, but you can try it for free. At least you could at that time. So I went in there and I think it's great. You can jump in, you can just go in for a quick flight and just fly around the level, which is quite an impressive experience within VR. However, it's a simulator, you can't just jump in and do all of these missions and things like that. The game is really learning how to fly a plane. That is the game. That is the point of it, really, which is great for some people. I'm just not really that much of a hardcore flight sim fanatic. So I want something a little bit more arcadey, but not too arcadey. So I think Ace Combat 7 will give me that arcadey experience that I can really give a try, and it looks great from the trailer. I think it looks like an experience that will work very well on PSVR because you can have it seated. You're in a cockpit. You can play with a DualShock, and I think it will work very well. It looks great, and I'm just really excited to give this game a try. Part of me worries that if I was to pick this game up, is it the kind of game that I'd want to play for hours and hours? I'm not too sure. I'd really like a demo, if I'm being honest. I'd love just an Ace Combat 7 demo just to give this thing a try and see if it's the kind of thing that I would want to sort of spend a few hours into. I'm not too sure. That's my only reservation with it, but I think it looks great.
Yeah, I really liked Eve Valkyrie. It had a good feeling, just being in the craft and being able to dogfight and just kind of whip around and bank around turns and objects. And I think Ace Combat 7 could recapture that feeling. One of the things I didn't like about Eve Valkyrie is that kind of once you go through the early tutorials and the little thing they called a campaign, it didn't have much replayability to me. So I'm hoping that Ace Combat 7 picks up in that shortfall and that it's able to capture my attention for longer, because the mechanics I feel can be really, really good, and it can have that true feeling of moving at high velocity. At the same time, though, I'm very cautiously optimistic because it's just a VR mode. It's not, as far as I know, unless they've changed anything, it's not a full, the whole game available in VR. Sending it to Anthony, what do you think?
You know what? Ace Combat, like these types of games have never interested me that much, because what ultimately happens is you're basically dogfighting these other jets, okay? And it's a blue sky with clouds. And how long can you look at a blue sky with clouds, even though you're zipping around and all of that? But I will say this, looking at the trailer, it looks beautiful. It really does look gorgeous. And then the other bonus is, with this being a flat game that is a mainstream game, Gary's talking about a demo. I mean, I don't think you guys have Redbox in the UK, but you probably have something similar maybe. And this is a game that I'll be able to rent, at Redbox and be able to try it out, kind of like Gran Turismo Sport. I rented that and I tried it for a couple of days. So that's the one good news about PSVR still having physical games. And if it happens to be a game that has a VR mode, you can always rent it. So that'll be cool.
Yep. So, Chris, you don't have a PlayStation VR. You're our lone dissenter, and at this point, you're our lone dissenter that owns a Vive as well. What do you think of Ace Combat? If you had a PlayStation, would you even be interested?
I think so, yeah. I used to play some War Thunder with friends and stuff. I mean, I guess this is more of like a single player story based experience from the looks of it. But it's just any game with a combat, a cockpit is really interesting to me, just because it feels so good in VR. I played lots of Eve Valkyrie when that came out, and obviously I want to play other cockpit games. So I think this looks really great. I did play War Thunder in VR in the Dev Kit 2 days, and it was like one of the coolest things ever, but it was real buggy. So just having a polished experience like this, even if it's like a small portion of it, yeah, if I had PSVR, I would definitely pick this up, no question.
Cool deal. So the next game I want to talk about, and I forgot to mention, I'm just going to do these in alphabetical order, and in no way have we selected every game coming in 2018. I would just try to target notable titles that that might catch some sort of hype, and also games that we haven't already previewed. So the next one on our list, we haven't talked much about it, or none that I can remember, is Alvo. And unfortunately, we don't know too much about it, but sort of in the same vein as Firewall Zero, and maybe Bravo Team and Pavlov and Onward. It is a military shooter. I believe there's an online component, a competitive component, and it's coming to all platforms. So, Chris, I believe you have mentioned this title before, so I'm going to send it right back your way. What can you tell us about Alvo, and is it going to be a big hit in 2018?
Man, I mean, I have played lots of CSGO in the past. I don't think I've ever mentioned this game, but it looks fun just based on looking at the trailer and all that. I don't know. It's basically like what Onward's trying to be, except kind of more of an arcadey based, kind of like CSGO, where you have these rounds that repeat very fast. But yeah, I mean, if it looks like, is it just VR? Do we know that? Yeah, it's just VR. Okay. So that's cool within itself, because with all these games, if it has a flat mode, you're going to be at either an advantage or a disadvantage, and probably in a fast-paced game like this, probably a disadvantage. But I mean, they don't really have too much on it. The release date is just 2018. Other than that, there's really no information. But it does look like a very good kind of made for VR-based shooter that would work for all platforms. So that is exciting. I'm interested to learn more about it once more information is released.
Yeah, the trailer. Everybody watching this on YouTube will be able to see this trailer as we talk about it, and it's a very short trailer, but graphically it looks pretty refined. In the vein of a Call of Duty or something. It's probably, of all the shooters, at least what we can see in the video, which has no indication of what it's going to look like or how it's actually going to perform. Here's nodding to you, Fallout 4. The game looks fantastic, and at the end of the teaser, it sort of shows the three of the soldiers, and one's wearing a Vive headset, one's wearing a PlayStation, and the other wearing a Rift headset. So it coming to all platforms is going to be really, really great. And I agree with kind of what you said. It looks more fast paced, not so much like Onward, and more like Pavlov, and which is really a lot borrowed from the Counter-Strike. And I think that speaks to me more, a bit of realism, but without a lot of the finickiness. It is still a game, and you kind of don't want to spend a lot of time dead being a spectator, which is kind of what I got out of Onward as opposed to Pavlov. So Gary, have you seen this trailer?
Yeah, I did. To me, like you say, I don't know what we're going to be getting in an actual game, because to me the trailer looks more or less like a kind of pre-rendered thing that they've just made to show what the game is, not necessarily actual sort of footage of the gameplay. Although there are sections in there that could potentially be gameplay footage. I don't know, but it does look really good from what they're showing. And these kinds of games do really well in not just in VR, but a lot of people love these cooperative multiplayer shooters. So I think it's great, especially since it's coming to all platforms. It's coming to PSVR, which will provide a lot of adoption for people. So it looks good. I've played a lot of Onward, or I did initially. I've not really gone in for quite a few months now, really. I need to get back in there, because I do like that game. And it's not necessarily my kind of game, so it was a bit of a surprise when I did enjoy that. So I think this is great. Another game like that, which is slightly different, slightly more faster paced, would appeal to a different kind of people. But it's great. Yeah, it looks good.
Anthony, have you? I've not seen you talk much about Alvo. What's your take on it?
Yeah, no, I haven't actually seen this trailer, but I did look at the Steam page for it, and what I looked at was the company that has made this, and the one other game that they've made is Quiz Show Tonight, which is like on PSVR. I think it's on Steam as well. Completely different, like has nothing to do with shooters in any way, shape, or form.
From what I understand, that game actually was also very buggy and did not perform right. Like it was sort of a trash game. I've not played it, but I've heard a lot of people I trust comment in the space and says that game was horrible. So that's not a good track record. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too good. I know there's about 6 or 7 games that seem to be kind of in this same general vein. And for me, not being a fan of this particular genre, what I'll do is just wait around. And if one of them like really distinguishes itself above the pack, then maybe I'd want to check it out. But I'm just not much of a multiplayer guy. But we do need a game like this to totally blow up. I mean, Onward and Pavlov have done well, so.
Onward and Pavlov have done really, really well. Still to date, some of the most played games on the Steam VR platform. With this being multi-platform, though, do you think it could be bigger than Onward in the sense that you would have the PlayStation community, the Oculus community, and the Steam community coming together and sort of keeping an online presence, which has been a big problem for a lot of online games, is that the market kind of dries up. Like if you go in to play Starblood Arena or something like that, like you may not be able to find a game. I'll go ahead and send it back to you, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I thought about was Rec Room. Like Rec Room is available on all 3 platforms, and there's a nice synergy with that. And if we could get a shooter game in this style that was on all the various headsets, that would be tremendously advantageous just for what you're saying, to be able to find a game, to be able to always go in and get a game. So Zero Killed is another game in this same vein that I believe is coming to all the platforms as well. So that's another one we could hope for.
Okay, moving on. The next game I have on the list is Blood and Truth, and that's coming to PlayStation VR. It's the sort of the full game oh my God, London Heist on PlayStation VR Worlds. It's probably the most popular game that's in VR Worlds. I absolutely loved London Heist. It has a really good graphic to it. It a little bit cartoony, but also really sharp and really vivid and really realistic in a way. And they also did clever things, like when you're smoking the cigar in the beginning of London Heist, you can blow, and the PlayStation microphone will pick that up, and that's when it releases the smoke. So it has some other real world integration that I think is clever. The developer is just obviously a very talented. So I really look forward to this game. Gary, sending it your way. I don't think you've played London Heist yet, mostly because you don't have Move controllers, maybe. But what do you think this game would be, and do you buy into the hype that it's going to be one of the standouts based on the success of London Heights?
Yeah, so many people have spoke about the London Heist, and I've actually got some Move controllers coming tomorrow. So I'm going to give London Heist, I'm going to pick up PlayStation VR Worlds and give that game a try as soon as I've got some Move controllers. But because so many people are sort of enthusiastic about London Heist, and when I first saw this trailer, I can't even remember where this trailer first was announced. It might have been Paris Games Week or something like that. It didn't really, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention properly because it didn't really appeal to me. And, I didn't have a PSVR at that time. And sometimes, you're just looking out for the things that interest you. But a couple of days ago, I went in and watched this trailer again, and it looks great because it's got, I sort of felt like, my impressions of it originally were like it was a shooting gallery. Again, you're just moving from various points, but it's really not that. So you've got free roam locomotion by all accounts. You're going through these separate levels. There's stealth mechanics in there as well, which is very interesting to me. I've mentioned Unnightly on the past couple of episodes of VR Roundtable, and the stealth mechanics in that are very well done. And the fact that this also has stealth mechanics built into it looks very interesting to me. And hopefully there's some variety in gameplay. It's not just shooting, you're setting up traps and this kind of stuff as well. It really does look like a good game. And I'm really excited. I want to try London Heist. I really can't wait to try London Heist and just get a rough idea of what this game is all about.
Yeah, in London Heist, there was no locomotion, and I won't spoil it for you, Gary, but you kind of just, it was a series of almost like interactive cutscenes in a way. There is some gameplay, so it's not that it's not a game, but there are moments where you're just seated, but the way it presents itself to you in interaction with the NPCs and everything was just all really, really well done. So I find it hard to believe that this game won't be a success for 2018. I don't think it's going to be the success that Skyrim was or anything like that, but I think it's going to have, as we're building up to its release, I think the PlayStation VR Reddit forum is going to be a buzz, and people are going to be, hyped for it and talking about it when the game comes out. Anthony, I know you've talked a lot about this actually in the past, but update us on where you stand on this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like we talk about, if you're going to put somebody in VR, what is great demo material to put somebody in VR? And we're usually talking about Vive and Oculus type stuff, but London Heist is right there. I mean, this game is right there. I took it for granted, and when I finally, like, I was really late to the party on PlayStation VR Worlds. I just thought it was kind of like just a bunch of demos and nothing very great. And I finally got it, and when I finally got into London Heist, I was like, oh my God, this might be one of the best experiences I've ever had, period, across any platform, any game. And what Steve mentioned briefly there was that character interaction, because early in the early days of VR, we very, very rarely did we have experiences where we're talking to a human character and the human character is looking at us. And the thing about VR is it can see you have a headset, it knows where your head is. So if they design games well, these computer characters can follow you and kind of eye track you. And they did some of that in London Heist. And the only thing that held it back was just, it was a brief experience. It's over in 20 minutes or whatever. And so it just doesn't have a ton of substance there. But then you hear they're making a full game out of this. And really, it's like when you go back to London Heist, what it really seems to me is that Sony was like, let's throw as much money and as much time at London Heist as we can. And this is the premier experience. This is what shows the power of VR, and it shows that. And now they're taking that developer and saying, hey, that was great. Now, can you make a full game out of that? Hopefully it'll be like 4 or 5 hours or more of what we got with that little 25-minute, 20-minute segment of London Heist. So this is my most wanted. See, the thing is, there's not that much. It's kind of like not the greatest year from a standpoint of games that we know that are coming soon. But not to disparage Blood and Truth in any way, but it's my number one most wanted game because there's not a lot of heavy hitters. I mean, we don't have Grand Theft Auto 5 VR that's known. We don't have a lot of heavy hitters, and this is my most wanted game right now.
Yeah, that's very fair. Moving on, our next game to sort of preview is going to be Marvel Powers United. This is exclusive to the Rift, and it's a big property, right? Like Marvel's huge. Like they're releasing a movie. It feels like multiple times a year, some big new Marvel movie, and I'm not that hyped for this one because it sort of feels like I hate to almost say it, but sort of as a not as good Robo Recall is kind of the way I felt watching the trailer. I could be completely wrong. They've announced the Hulk, Thor, Deadpool, the raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy. I can't think of its name right now. So it's got a cast of characters to the best of my knowledge outside of the Hulk. I don't remember seeing anything like Captain America or Spider-Man or anything yet, so I think they may be keeping it to the somewhat less popular, or maybe leading up into its announce they're going to start announcing Spider-Man and the more popular characters. So I'll send it to you, Chris. Have you seen gameplay of this? One thing that I will admit that I wasn't aware of when the initial trailer did come out was that it's multiplayer co-op, and that may be the one sort of big thing that differentiates it from something like, say, a Robo Recall. So what's your take?
Yeah, it really does look like a similar Robo Recall, and like I'm not too into Marvel stuff personally. Like I watch the movies, but I don't know if I'd really want to play a game like this. I guess the question is, how well are all these characters going to be differentiated? Like when you're Thor, is the world going to feel tiny? Like is there going to be cool mechanics like that make it worth playing? But surface level, it's basically like a wave-based shooter, but with these characters and these properties that people know of. So I think Oculus is just trying to use it as like a big marketing move. Like they have a really well done website for it I'm looking at right now, where they have list all the characters and like who's next and all this stuff. So I think they're kind of banking on this more than they should be. I don't know if it's going to be the best thing ever, but
since I wasn't sure, go ahead and run down those characters that they have listed.
Oh, sure. Okay, so really not many of them are that known, but there's Loki. Thor is kind of big. Black Bolt, Crystal. I don't actually know who most of these are. Ronan the Accuser, Then there's the Hulk, Captain Marvel, and Deadpool's probably one of the, will probably be one of the fan favorites, as well as Rocket Raccoon. So, yeah. There's 4 more that it says are coming soon. So we don't know what those are going to be yet. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I really hope it's going to be something special. It's going to be something that everyone's going to want to pick up. But if it's like more than $20, I don't see me and my friends who have Rifts picking this up and playing it together. There's so many other co-op games that I think I'd rather play, Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've never heard of Captain Marvel, but I'm also not a comic book fan. I watch the movies and I'm aware of the big ones, Thor and Spider-Man and so on, but it's kind of weird that they have a lot of these lesser known characters in here. But I will say, even though I'm personally not like really stoked for this, I could see it being very successful, and I know my son would just absolutely go bananas to play this. He loves Robo Recall. He still plays it, and being able to do it as Hulk and Hulk Smash and all that, I think he's going to be super excited. So I see there being a big market for this, and I see it being a 2018 success. I'm just not sure I'm going to be that hyped about it. Gary, have you seen this game?
Yeah, I have, and I'm not really a Marvel guy either. I think honestly, I don't really even enjoy the movies. I don't watch them anymore. They seem to be coming out constantly, and everything's too convoluted. Everything's sort of intertwined, and you got the Marvel universe, and it seems like you're missing out on things if you don't follow it to the nth degree. You're missing out on certain things because they're all interconnected with each other and stuff like this. So I just don't want to get involved in all of that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really appeal to me, in all honesty, this game at all. But what you were saying there, Steve, I think it's great for people to get excited about VR, because I think a lot of people will be interested in this, and this is a major IP to have such a big title for VR as well. So it's great that it's going out there. It's just really not one that I have any interest in.
All right, Anthony, last but not least.
Yeah, so I kind of thought this was going to be like a late January game. But we still have no date for this, and we're here on January 7th, so we don't know when this is coming out. I'm still thinking it's first quarter, so maybe February or March. But one of the things that you hear a lot with this game is that it's just this Robo Recall reskin, blah, blah, blah. Now, Sanzaru Games, the developer, they did Ripcoil, they did the VR Sports Challenge, I think it was called. Yep. And I thought they did a good job with that. And they've also done other flat games that they did really good. So I think people are selling Sanzaru Games a little bit short here, thinking that this is going to be a dud. I do expect this will be like a $29.99 game, similar to like Arctica 1. I don't think this will be $20 though, because Marvel, I mean, you're paying for that license. I don't think it could possibly be $20. But I'm still relatively excited about this. I just kind of wonder, when is this coming,
Yeah, I actually kind of do you one further, and I'll think this is going to be $39.99 just because it's Marvel. And we still, as Chris said, we still have the unannounced heroes to and it could be the big ones, but also the game could have some chops. I actually like the developer. You're absolutely right. VR Sports Challenge was a very fun game. It's completely different than what this game is going to be, but I think it's going to be Oculus is going to try to position it as a major release for them, and I think it's going to come in at $39.99, and maybe that'll be okay. And if it's a long, it has lots of missions and you can get a lot of playability out of it, then $39.99 is okay. Moving on, though, the next game to talk about is Sprint Vector. Now, as far as I know, none of us have played it. They have, in some ways, you could link up with the developer and get access to an early alpha build. I don't think any of us went through those steps and actually played it. But Sprint Vector, I'm going to send it back to Anthony because I know he really liked To the Top. And that's what really the first thing that comes to mind for me when I see Sprint Vector. And I know it's sort of a arcadey, run fast and just kind of grab and jump and navigate through a terrain. It's done by a good developer, though, the guys from Raw Data. So it could be, in my opinion, a little more polished than maybe To the Top was. I feel a little less indie. So I'm pretty excited to give it a go, but I really don't know what to think about it beyond, just mild curiosity. So, Anthony, are you hyped for this one?
I'm not as hyped for this as you might think. And reason being is like To the Top is it's kind of platformery, but you're also doing it's like time trials. You're always trying, like there's so many different courses and you're like, can I just shave a couple more seconds off my time? And so that's what makes To the Top. And then the music is so good and the courses look really cool. When I watch Sprint Vector, it seems more pure racing than really platforming. And that's where my interest level kind of dips a little bit. If it seemed more of a platformer in addition to the racing type thing, I think I would have a little bit more interest in it, but I've never tried it. I've never tried a demo of it. So I'm still keeping my options open as far as that goes. And this is a talented developer. So I like arm swinging type mechanic. I like that a lot in Vindicta. So I'm still very interested in this, but it doesn't look as much as like To the Top as I would probably like it to be.
Chris, what do you take? Then this game is coming to all platforms, I believe. Don't quote me on that. So yeah, Anthony's shaking his head yes. So what do you think about it, Chris?
Yeah, it looks good. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, there's all these things in CS:GO where they kind of slide around. It's not really the game, but like it's like this parkour thing where you run fast and try to slide off of walls and stuff. It looks very similar to that. And yeah, I like the graphics of it. I think I'd have a lot of fun with this. It's kind of like a Fun Run-esque game, which is like a mobile game. A lot of people played in my generation as kids, like on their phones. It's just kind of like running fast and trying to stop other people from winning. So I think it's going to be like a fun little game to play. Once again, I don't know how much I'd pay for this just because it's kind of like a really repetitive thing. And you'll want to have all your friends pick it up too. Like if, it really does look focused to be on the multiplayer side of things. But I'm probably more excited than you guys, I think, about this. It looks really cool. Like, I don't know. I really like the aesthetics of it. And I think I would enjoy playing it with my friends for sure. So I'll probably pick it up when it comes out.
Yeah, like it's very arcadey, so it's something that you can jump into, or it looks very arcadey. Like you can spend 15, 20 minutes, hop out, and like a game like To the Top. Like when I was in it, I really enjoyed it, but it was like when I was in it, I didn't want to stop. But I never, like when I wasn't in it, I didn't really feel compelled to go into it, and I could kind of see Sprint Vector playing out the same way. But I could also at the same time seeing myself maybe liking it more than To the Top. I think there's going to be some of that mechanic you were referring to, Anthony, in the I'm going to shave 3 seconds off, I'm going to whatever. Like I think as you're going to run through these courses and it's still going to be timed. It may be less platformy, like you mentioned, and more of a linear course, track for lack of a better word. But I think it's going to be very similar, but with a little more polish. But also, I could be very wrong. Again, having not played it. Gary, what's your take?
I'm actually quite excited about this one, mainly because I think just from the trailers that I've seen, it does seem like it's more sort of linear racing, but it also has these sections where you seem to sort of jump up and you're able to climb sections, but also push forward and then sort of fly. It almost seems like you're able to sort of jump off platforms and then fly for a period of time, and then you hit the ground and you start moving your arms. And this is the thing, Anthony, as well. I was because this mechanic uses the arm swinging locomotion method, and I know that you quite like that in some of the other games that you mentioned, like Vindicta, for example. I think that's interesting for this particular kind of game because it's all focused around that, really. And to be honest, I'm excited for this game, but it really lives and dies by how well it feels for me. It's just, I think if it feels good to go through these levels, then I'll continue playing. If it doesn't feel good, no matter how good all the other game mechanics are around it, then it will probably fall off for me. So I think I'll give it a try, and hopefully it'll feel good to run through these levels at these really high speed, jump up, climb a wall, and then jump off again, and this kind of stuff. I hope it feels good. That's the main thing.
Yep, so that was Sprint Vector from developer Servios. The next game we have on our list is The Impatient. Now, that's a game we've talked about once or twice, but I went ahead and put it on the list because it's coming out January 23rd, I believe, or January 24th. It's that week. And, talking about the games that might be our game of the year. I don't know that this is going to be the game of the year, but of all these titles that we've listed and the titles that we haven't listed that I know about, the Inpatient is my most anticipated one, and I would not be surprised in the slightest if it wasn't my favorite of the bunch. The developer, they have Supermassive Games. They've done really well for VR, and they've done pretty good with this Until Dawn franchise. They prior to PlayStation VR, Until Dawn was a game that had a very narrative. It was almost like a Telltale game, but a little more gamey. I really enjoyed the title. It had really good character models. They had a couple actors. The kid from Mr. Robot, I can't think of his name right now, but also Hayden Panettiere was in that game, and they really modeled her very well. And then they came out, with PlayStation VR, they branched out with Until Dawn Rush of Blood that set place in the same universe. But of course, it was very arcadey. It was the roller coaster shooter with a very much of a jump scare theme. Well, now, the Inpatient is coming, and it also takes place in that same universe. You have this psycho ward hospital, and something happens, and you're a patient there. Relatively recently, they had a show where at a trade show, I don't remember which one, but if you played the game, you sat in a old 1950s style wheelchair. They really kind of themed out their booth with that kind of vibe going on. So gameplay wise, I don't really know what the gameplay is. I believe it is gamepad based. I don't know if they've announced any move support. I have not seen any videos online of someone playing with the moves, but I have seen someone playing with a gamepad. So I think it's going to be a slower paced game than, say, Rush of Blood, of course. But I think it's going to be very good in atmosphere. So I've talked a lot about it. Again, it's the one I'm most excited for. I'm going to send it to Anthony. Where do you stand on all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I will say for it is the last big VR game we got was LA Noire, right? That's the last big VR game that released. Like, I'm talking big, right? And this game on the 23rd is really the next big VR game. I know it's on PSVR, so it's kind of a different thing, but it's a little bit of a drought here that we've had, which is a good thing because we've had so many games and it gives us a chance to kind of catch our breath. But this is the biggest game of January without question. It's interesting because when Wilson's Heart came out, and then when we played Wilson's Heart, and then when you see Inpatient, it actually looks very similar in some ways, although I expect this to be much more horror, like on the more intense horror than say Wilson's Heart. And I'm super excited for it just because, the pedigree. It's Supermassive Games. The two games that I've played from them, Rush of Blood and Tumble VR, I loved both of those games. Both of those games were very polished, very tight experiences. And this was supposed to be a big time release for PSVR in the fourth quarter, and they moved it. And I think they moved it specifically because of Skyrim VR. And I think it was the right decision. It was the perfect decision. And now it gives them this big game coming on the 23rd to kind of add that momentum for PSVR. So absolutely. I mean, this is the next big game. So I'm absolutely looking forward to it. But like you were saying, Steve, I don't really know a lot about how the gameplay is actually going to work. I heard that there's like voice controls as well. Like it actually has like voice recognition. So that's going to be kind of cool. But I'm kind of looking forward to going into it like a blank slate and not really knowing much about it and just going into it.
So Gary, I don't think you've played Rush of Blood yet because you should be holding out on those moves. Don't play it with a DualShock. Had you played Until Dawn? I know you've had a PS4 for a long time. Had you played Until Dawn prior to the whole VR scene kicking off?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I played all the way through that game, actually. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And actually, just that kind of tone for that game, because it's a slower paced tone. And like you say, it's almost like a Telltale kind of game, point and click adventure and that kind of stuff. And I think it worked really well just as a game. But I think that style of game could work particularly well in VR as well. So I'm looking forward to this. Again, I don't know too much about it, but it's an interesting point that Anthony brought up a minute ago about how it was delayed from just before Christmas to now it's going to be released in January. Because I agree, I think that was absolutely the right decision to make, because it would have been competing against so many other titles at that time. Skyrim, what a massive title for PSVR. And now with people getting so many PSVRs for Christmas and this kind of stuff, I think it will do this game better than had it released before Christmas. So I'm really excited by it. I don't know too much about it other than it's from this franchise, this Until Dawn franchise. So like Anthony and like you, Steve, I'm looking forward to just playing this and not really knowing too much about it, really.
Okay, that was the Impatient. I almost said that was Until Dawn. That was the Impatient from Supermassive Games. Next and final on our list, and it's not to say we can't talk about more games, but being published by Ubisoft is Elijah Wood's company. Anthony can probably tell the story a little better than I can, but Transference. This is a title that we really don't know anything about. We haven't really seen any gameplay, but they're sort of have kind of put their necks on a line a little bit, it seems, in terms of promising something very unique, something that's kind of doing something different. So I'm going to send it to Anthony first, because I think you have more of a backdrop and more awareness of this game than I do. So tell us about Transference.
Yeah, I don't know much more than you do. I just know the company is SpectraVision, which is this new company that Elijah Woods is part owner. Like, he was part founder of this. Like, a number of different people all came together. And this company, SpectraVision, I think their idea is these are like Hollywood-based people, but they realize that VR and AR is going to be huge. These are people that realize that, and they're getting out in front of it, and they want to experiment in it, and they want to like see what they can do with VR and AR. And so I think with Transference, this is going to be a game that is almost multimedia, from the standpoint that it's going to be a game, but it's going to mix almost like VR experience type stuff along with it. But we don't really have much to go on here. Like, there aren't like screenshots for this, really. There isn't even like an official game logo for this game. And the footage that we've seen of the experience is incredibly brief. Like, you don't really get a good idea of even what's going on, but it kind of seems almost like, the movie, not the movie, the TV show Stranger Things, when they're in that facility where it's like the energy facility, and they kind of like wire somebody up, or they're doing like, it almost seems like it's kind of some type of experiment that's going on, and like you're in some type of facility where you're using your mind and you're doing stuff, and then maybe you have to like escape out of there. But we really don't know too much about this. Supposedly spring 2018, but considering we haven't really seen or heard anything from this, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see this end up getting delayed until like August or September, or maybe even the fall. So hopefully we'll get some more information on it pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm very interested in it, because it seems that it might have the right kind of mood that I really like, and not maybe all that dissimilar from, say, the Impatient. What though, like Ubisoft, and thinking of the things that they've done with Eagle Flight and the Star Trek Bridge Crew and Werewolves Within, they've come out with 3 games, and they support all the platforms, which has been great, and they're all very unique experiences that I really thoroughly enjoyed, but unfortunately at the same time kind of got over with in 1 or 2, maybe 3 playthroughs or play sessions. Like, it wasn't able to captivate me in the way, say, Skyrim has, or anything like that. So I'm eager if Ubisoft will sort of break that mold with me here, and that this will be something that I really invest 10, 15 hours into, because I have not invested that sort of time with any of their other games, while ironically also really liking everything they've done in VR so far. So send it to you, Chris. What do you know about Transference?
I'm just let's look at some quotes on the website that might help us kind of understand what the heck this is. I don't know. So it says, explore a multi-dimensional home filled with secrets you can discover. collect the evidence of a family's history to choose how you repair their lives. I don't know. This sounds real cool. Like it sounds like there could be some sort of like multi-dimensional mechanic or something. There's like things hidden in different realities or some weird thing like that. I don't know. It says feel the presence of corrupted memories through VR. So it sounds like it's gonna be real creepy, kind of real sci-fi, real weird. But yeah, I just like you all said, there's not much on this other than these few little paragraphs that all kind of say different things. So I'm excited just because of how mysterious it is. I really loved Eagle Flight. That's really the only one of the games Ubisoft published that I liked a lot, that I actually got to play. So I'm looking forward to this. I don't know. The logo looks real cool and real creepy. Like it's kind of like a horror VR, like VR's taking over type look to it. I don't know.
In the trailer, they have 4 people kind of sitting back to back, and you only see this for 1 second maybe, and they're all wearing VR headsets. So I think the feeling that I got is they're going from some sort of mind games, like they're playing with your mind in some way, and that really interests me, because I'm hoping for a like the ending of Seven, the movie Seven, or the BioShock's Would You Kindly. It's like some sort of moment where it just totally floors you because they've been screwing with you mentally, and they totally get you. You don't see it coming. I really hope they're able to deliver on something like that, because it seems to me that's sort of the direction they're taking. Gary, what have you?
Yeah, not a lot to add on this one, to be honest. I think you've said it all on this, because we don't know too much really. So the only thing I'd say is, looking at the announcement trailer, it seems to almost have these parts of like full motion video. I wonder if it's got like full motion video within the game itself. It sort of harks back to kind of like the early 90s, where you had all these games coming out of full motion video kind of games, and it looks similar to that, the trailer does, towards the end. It's interesting what they're going to do with this, but yeah, I think you've all said it all, because we don't know too much about it anyway.
Okay. Does anybody have any other games they want to bring up?
No, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Well, this has been our 2018 preview. We will be back next week with a normal episode, maybe back to our original format. We haven't said it in a while, but as always, hit that like button. I'm not going to say the word smash outside of saying the word smash, but hit that like button, hit it, and subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, whatever that's called, whatever podcast directory you listen to, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.